Nobel Peace Prize winner, last week the recipient of the Congressional Gold Medal, Aung Suu Kyi.
Thank you. Thank you. Next to Senator McConnell is always the nicest place to be. I'm here basically really to thank him for everything that he has done for us. He said that he had helped us in his own small way, but that made a big difference to our movement. His consistent support over many, many years has been a great factor in promoting our movement for democracy, in keeping our hopes alive, and in letting us know that we had friends who may be far away from us, but who were always thinking about us. And I've come here to thank him and to thank all of you who have stood by our cause. I also want to thank you for the friendship that you have extended to the peoples from my country. Today, I had the great privilege to meet some of our ethnic nationalities who have found refuge among you. We are a country of many peoples, of many different ethnic nationalities. And I'm ashamed to say that I can't speak a single one of their languages. But there's so many that I hope they will forgive me. If I'd spoken only one, then the others would have thought, well, why not ours as well? But I hope that we do not need a common language in order to reach out to one another, because our aspirations are very much the same. We want to see our country at peace, and our country united, and our country able to accept that we are made up of diverse traditions and cultures and languages, and that only strengthens us as a nation. People have been very kind and praised me in many ways. For example, when Senator McConnell talked about my refusing to wear the bulletproof jacket, I think I'd better admit that one of the reasons was that it was so unattractive. So I think we mustn't forget the courage of the unknown ones, the ones whose names are not known, but who have worked quietly and assiduously to bring about the changes that we want for our country. Have we achieved these changes yet? No, we have not yet got to the point where we can say our country is the best refuge for our people. At this moment, there are many of our countrymen still living in refugee camps, and this morning I met some who had come from refugee camps to find refuge in this country. I'm very, very grateful to the people of the United States. But I would like our country to be the safest, the best refuge for our people. When that day comes, then we can say that we have discharged our responsibilities fully. At the moment, Burma is in the unique position of being able to decide which way it's going to go. But this is not for one person or one organization or even the government by itself to decide. Our peoples must decide where we wish to go. And deciding where we want to go is not enough. We have to have the determination and the commitment to follow through that path. And in doing that, we hope that our friends will stay with us. It worries me a little that many may think there is no longer any need for them to make an effort to help along the democratization of Burma. That some may think that we have got to where we have been trying to get to, and therefore we do not need as much support as we used to. On the contrary, it is now that we need your support more than ever, your intelligent support, because you need to be aware of what is going on in Burma, to be able to separate the false from the true, to be able to distinguish, to discriminate between genuine progress and what is just progress on the surface. This is a lot more difficult than finding out who are the goodies and who are the baddies, as happened in the past. Life is not as simple as all that. It's not all black and white. There are many subtle shades of grey. So I would like to request you to please continue to keep your eyes on my country, to find out what's going on, and to view things with what I call cautious optimism. I've also used the word healthy skepticism, but some are very annoyed about it, particularly because they misinterpreted it. It was put into Burmese in one of the state newspapers then as the good health of negative factors. Now that's of course not what healthy skepticism means at all. And when I talk about healthy skepticism and cautious optimism, I simply mean that you must be very careful what you accept as genuine progress and genuine moves towards true democratization. A genuine democracy depends on the people feeling that they are part of the process of government. And to get there, we still have a lot to do. I am now in the legislature, and I must say that I am pleased with the way the legislature is developing. And I hope that it will continue to develop in the right direction. But we have almost no judiciary to speak of. Or perhaps I should put it like this: we do not have a judiciary that we can be proud of. We need an independent, well-educated and fair judiciary. So this is something we have to work towards. The executive is headed by President U Thein Sein, whom we all consider to be reform-minded, but we still have a long way to go before we can say that the three branches of democracy are keeping well and getting healthier from day to day. In this, I would like to ask you for your continued support and help. And I would like to say to all the people of Burma who are here, all those who have come from my country, that we must work together. It does not matter where you have settled. It does not matter what nationality you have taken up. If you still have in your heart a love for and an attachment to the country of your birth, you will be able to help us in many different ways. You do not have to be Burmese to be able to help Burma. I'm not aware that Senator McConnell is Burmese, but he has helped us a lot more than many of my fellow countrymen. So once again, I would like to thank him. I would like to thank all of you here and to express not just the hope, but I have to say the belief that we will all be able to go forward to build the kind of Burma of which we have dreamed for so many years. Thank you.
Aung Suu Kyi, thank you for honoring us today with your remarks. And she has now agreed to honor all of you by answering some questions. So we have 3 microphones in the audience. If you'd please, we have one here, one on the my left and one up in the balcony. So don't be shy. Come forward, please, and offer a question. We have one, please.
Ms. Suu Kyi, my heart throbs with the people of Burma, but I worry that one day the dictators will revert back to dictatorship, like it happened in Pakistan. There will be, excuse me, democracy in the front, but military in the back. Do you think that will happen in Burma? I hope not.
Well, of course, there's always a fear that there will be backsliding. And when people ask me whether the democratic process in Burma is irreversible, I always say there's no such thing as an irreversible moment. But we've got to create a situation where reversing the process would be much more painful for everybody than keeping forward. I think the real secret to establishing a strong democracy is to empower the people. This is why we would like to appeal, while I'm about it, to all those who are interested in investment in Burma to make sure that economic investments also are done in such a way as to empower democratic values and to empower the ordinary people so that they will be able to keep their governments in order, as it were.
We'll go.
Dao Suu, do you support the lifting of sanctions by the United States government while human rights abuses continue in the border regions in Karen State?
Yes, I support the lifting of sanctions, or the relaxing of sanctions, I should say, because some of the sanctions have not been completely lifted yet, because I think it is time that we of our country started taking responsibility for carrying on the process of democratization. The sanctions have been of great help to us. I doubt that we would be where we are now if those sanctions had not been instituted. But I know that there are still human rights violations in Burma. There are human rights violations in many countries all over the world still continuing. And in the end, it's we who live in the country who must make sure that these violations come to an end. And it will be an ongoing process. I think even in the United States there have been accusations of violations of human rights. So this is a process that will never come to an end. And this is something we must work out for ourselves. If we take the view that only sanctions will be able to put an end to human rights violations, it is in a sense an abnegation of responsibility, putting all the onus on sanctions rather than on our own efforts. I would like to give our people a chance to show that they can make progress with the help of the world, with the help that will come through the removal of sanctions, and that as we progress materially, that we will also be able to make the right kind of spiritual and humanitarian progress that will help us to get rid of human rights violations.
Thank you.
We'll go over to the right.
Dao Suu, we're so happy to have you here, first of all. Thank you. I teach at a university in Arkansas, and we're very interested in ultimately developing exchanges. We have a few Burmese students on our campus, and we'd love to have more, and we would love to start seeing exchanges going the other way. I'm curious what is the progress of the higher education reform in the legislature right now?
Well, when we joined the legislature recently in July, we found that there was a draft law for university education. The university education law was already about to be discussed, and there was not very much that we could do. But I have to say that with the cooperation of the Speaker, it has come to the point when we can redraft the law, and we hope that we will be able to participate actively in the drawing up of this new legislation with regard to university education. But I must mention here that in Burma we have a great need for reforms in basic education, not just university education. Of course, we would like to make our university education law as liberal as possible, the kind of law that will enable our young people to get the kind of education that opens the world up to them and opens them up to the world. So we hope to make progress there, but basic education is still a matter of great concern. And while we are talking about university education and about exchange students, I would like to mention that the decades of a poor education system in Burma has meant that very few of our young people have enough command of the English language in order to be able to take advantage of the openings that I think will be coming to us in the near future. And so I would like all universities which are considering exchange programs for the young people of Burma to think of having intensive English language courses in preparation for the university courses. This has been done, for example, quite successfully in Japan. Burmese students who receive scholarships to go to study in Japan would first be put through an intensive Japanese language course before they join the university courses. If you were to be able to follow that practice, then I think some of our less privileged students would be able to take advantage of the new openings. At the moment, the young people in Burma who have a good command of English are very few, and the great majority of them belong to privileged families which have been able to provide them with a good grounding in the English language. So while we're about it, please consider linking language training with university courses. Thank you.
We'll move up to the balcony. Next.
Suu, thank you for being here today. I'm from Louisville, Kentucky, and I went to Atherton High School, where the mainstream was usually sort of a fiery liberal wearing a Che t-shirt. But I knew a great many people there who sort of turned me on to you and thinking about you, so it's cool to be here today. Here's my question. It's a little more broad-based and less about specific recent events. As Senator McConnell said in his opening, we think of the United States as this great beacon of freedom, and I think as we grow up and get it at all levels of school, we think of democracy. Some of us start to think of it as this American thing. What do you think is unique in the Burmese perspective on this journey to democracy? I mean, what can we learn from you all?
I think what you can learn from us is that we are not as different from you as you think we are. People all want the same things. I've always said that to me, what democracy means is the right balance between freedom and security. People want to feel secure. At the same time, they love their liberty. They want to be free. They want to feel that they're free to make their own choices in life. So we are not that different from you. Yes, in many ways we seem different, and yes, our customs are different, our mores are different to a certain degree. But in the end, when it comes down to it, I don't think that there's any people in the world who would not say that they want security as well as freedom. Of course, how they define security and how they define freedom may be different. In dictatorships, in authoritarian governments, they tend to emphasize the security part and they ignore the freedom. For the military regime that took over in 1988 was called the State Law and Order Restoration Council. Well, you can imagine that from the name itself what kind of a government it must have been, especially if you consider that law and order does not translate very happily into Burmese. The official Burmese translation is quiet, crouched, crushed, and flattened. That's a literal translation of the words that make up the expression law and order. Well, that's not my view of security. I mean, I think you'd feel very insecure in a flattened position. So We want security. We want freedom. We want to be able to realize our full potential. When we were fighting for independence, the fathers of our independence movement always said, we want to be able to shape our own destiny. And I think that's what all peoples want. So what you must learn from us is the value of your rights. This is what worries me sometimes about our friends in the West, that they take many of their rights for granted. And I think sometimes they abuse them because they take them so much for granted. So what you should learn from us is how valuable your democratic rights are, and that together with those rights you have the responsibility to try to preserve them.
Dr. Ziegler.
Ms. Suu Kyi, thank you for coming to speak with us here in Louisville today. We greatly appreciate it. My question is, when Burma, as an authoritarian regime, Burma was very close to an authoritarian China. As it democratizes, assuming that process continues, where do you see Burma's international position going? Will it retain close ties with China? Will it draw closer to the United States? How do you see that evolving?
I should mention that when Burma became independent in 1948, we became independent as a parliamentary democracy. And we believed in the values of democracy, and although of course you can say we were not a perfect democracy, considering the fact that we had to cope with a lot of internal armed insurgencies in those first years, we did well. We certainly felt free. I always remember the days of my childhood as days when people were not afraid to speak out against the government, and of articles lampooning the Prime Minister appearing quite regularly in the past, and nobody was arrested for that. So we were a practicing democracy, flawed but still strong and going in the right direction. In those days, we were one of the first countries in the world to recognize the communist government of China in the 1950s. And we established good relations with China, friendly relations. We maintained a neutral position. We were good friends of India, of China, of the countries in our region, and also of the Western nations. We established good friendly relations with our ex-colonial government, the English. We became very friendly with them. We had good relations with the United States. And now that we are going back towards democracy, I would like to think that Burma, rather than being a bone of contention between China and the United States, would be able to bring those two great countries together. It is in the interest of the world that the United States and China should be friends rather than adversaries. And this is something I would like to see. I would like to see a world where the greater the powers are, the more they realize that they have a responsibility to keep on good terms for the sake of the rest of the world. And I certainly would not like Burma to be in a position where we have to choose between one big power or the other, but that we can not only be friends with both, but we may be an instrument of bringing them closer together. This may seem very ambitious, but I think you have to be ambitious if you want to get somewhere.
Thank you.
First of all, credit where credit is due, and Senator McConnell, have great respect for your work over the years in this area. Thank you so much. Welcome, Suu Kyi, and my spiritual community has been praying for you and your people for quite some time, and for all the people that you represent today who are struggling so hard, we extend our prayers and best wishes to them also. For the first time in human history, it is said that we live in a world that has had, where most of the people alive today have seen the benefits of a nonviolent revolution or nonviolent movement that has changed their station in life, that has either changed their government or parts of policy. And that's a first for the earth as we know it. And so what I would like to ask for you as a personal reflection, Since we know that nonviolence is not a sentiment, it is indeed a power, how has this power informed your life, the power of nonviolence? What have you learned from it in the past, and what do you hope to learn from now on into the future? Thank you.
One of the greatest powers of nonviolence is that it doesn't waste your time making you think of violent ways of getting what you want. It frees up a lot of your time. And it also frees up a lot of your heart. Because if you have decided to follow the path of nonviolence, then basically you have to win over your enemies. Because you're not thinking of annihilating them, or making them, or wounding them, or making them incapable of continuing with their lives. So you have to think of winning them over. And if you start following that path of nonviolence, you have to learn about reconciliation. You have to learn to listen to the other side, to learn to understand them. And this has been a great learning process. I have to admit, though, that I'm I'm more fortunate than most people, because our adversary, although I don't like to say this, but it's the truth, our adversary was the army. And since my father was the founder of the Burmese army, I had a special relationship with them. And I never hated them. I hated some of the things they did, very much indeed. But I never hated the army as such. And that helped me in trying to understand them, in trying to reach out to them. And I think all those who are choosing between violence and non-violence must consider this very seriously. Do they want to use their talents to win over people, or do they want to use their talents to destroy people? Well, for me, the choice is clear. I'm not interested in destroying people. Why? Because I don't want to be destroyed myself. So you must be able to put yourself in the place of your adversaries. What do you not want done to you? Why should they want done to themselves? And I've been emphasizing the fact that hatred and fear are very closely linked. And if you have true courage, you need not hate anybody. I always throw out this challenge. Think of somebody you really hate, or you think you hate. I wonder whether real hate is possible. I suppose it is. I have always found it well nigh impossible for myself. I've tried to work out what or whom do I really hate. And quite frankly, I don't know what it feels like to really hate somebody. But I've come to the conclusion that hate cannot be dissociated from fear. You hate something because you think that thing or that person will be able to harm you in some way. Well, even if, for example, if young people feel that they hate somebody in their class, there must be some reason why. Perhaps because that somebody may be better than them at work, or that somebody may be in a better position to win the attention of the girl you would like to win attention of, and so on and so forth. So you will always find this. And the more self-confidence you develop in yourself, the less you will fear or hate others. So nonviolence is a good way of making yourself a better person.
We'll go back to the balcony.
I have a question about the fourth estate, or the press. I should say media, it's not just the press anymore. In lieu of the fact that there may not be a unifying language in the country, how do people get their information, and what's the status of the media?
Well, I used to get my information from the BBC and the VOA and the RFA and so on. And I think that's how a lot of people in Burma got their information. And by the way, talking about the fact that there are different languages, the the RFA, I know, has programs in the languages of the different ethnic nationalities. I'm not sure about the VOA and the BBC. So I think we get a lot of our information from external services, or we used to. Now, since 2011, the media is in a better position in Burma. It has become more liberal. The climate is more liberal. Apparently now we don't have to submit articles for censorship. I don't know whether that means that anything can be published. It may well mean that after publication we may have to take responsibility for some of the things that we write. But certainly there are now many magazines and journals, not yet daily newspapers. The only 2 daily newspapers of the country so far, are state-owned. So we can't say that our media has been totally liberalized yet, but we're going in that direction. The media is, of course, very important, but I have to confess that I have some concerns about the role of the media, because I think it makes, in my country, and I'm sure it's not that different from yours, even now, although we are very young in terms of media freedom and we're not completely free yet, we find that people have become too media conscious, and by this I mean public personalities, not because I find that there are public personalities who aim their actions at media reaction instead of doing what they think is right or doing what they think should be wrong. I have become aware of some who do what will give them a good press. Do you not find this here in the States? I find this worrying. I find this worrying, that your politics and your principles should be over-influenced by the media. The media is indispensable for keeping people in line, for making sure that people do not do what they're not supposed to do, for warning public figures that they are answerable to the general public. But I think there is the danger that people become too media conscious, and I would appeal to the media to do something about this. What can they do to make sure that some public personalities are not just playing to them, and that in that way they lose sincerity and genuine concern for important issues?
Yeah, I'm very glad to see Mother Aung San Suu Kyi today. I think it's going to be only one time in my life to see her. I'm very glad that. I had a question. Actually, I came from a refugee camp, and I just came in here about 3 years ago. And I had a question for me, I'm a refugee, so I don't have any Burmese citizenship, and either my parents, they don't have citizenship, so. I have a question. If I go back to Burma, so will you grant me to become a Burma citizenship one day?
I want Burma to be a country where we have good, fair citizenship laws. And we have always said, that is to say the National League for Democracy, that rule of law is essential if we are to be a working democracy. If we have good, fair citizenship laws and there's rule of law, then all those who are entitled to citizenship under those laws should be granted citizenship. So this is the kind of country that I would like to build up. And I hope that we will be able to do it sooner rather than later. And I hope this is not the only time when we meet. I look forward to other occasions.
Aung San Suu Kyi Mingalaba. I lived in Myanmar for 3 years, and I was there the night that you were released from house arrest. It was a wonderful night for your country. And now to have you here with us is a wonderful day for our country, and we are so thankful that you're here with us. I wonder if you could speak more on the issue you just talked about, specifically with the Rohingya issue in Rakhine State. With your new role in government, how do you see your your role with that issue? How do you see that evolving as your role in Myanmar changes?
First of all, I'm intrigued by your expression, my new role in government. I'm not quite sure what you mean by that. I'm now, of course, a member of the legislature. I don't know whether that's what you mean. But in that case, I'll have to point out that I'm one of 651. And not only that, our party, we have only 45 members out of this 651. Nevertheless, we feel that we can make some difference because the Speaker is fair-minded and allows us to take part in the proceedings of the legislature as though we were a strong opposition, because we are the major opposition, even though with only 45 members. And now, with regard to citizenship and the problems, with regard to the problems in the Rakhine, I'm concerned that there is too much focus now on animosities and on adversarial issues rather than on reconciliation and on harmony. I'm always, I have been criticized because I don't speak out strongly against one community or the other, and I have no intention of doing so. If they want to criticize me for that, then they can go on criticizing me, because I do not think that we will help the situation. The communal problems have been going on for a very long time. When I was released in 2011, I can't quite remember in relation to what, but I was asked quite early on after my release, so that's towards the end of 2010, what I felt like about the situation in the Rakhine. And I said then that we have to tackle practical problems first, as quickly as possible. And one of the biggest problems there was a porous border, unpoliced or not well enough policed, and also, I have to admit, a corrupt immigration system that allowed people to come and go if they could pay their way across. So I said there are going to be problems because each country will claim that these people don't belong to us, they've come from across the border. And since there was no proper policing and no proper proof of who had come from where, this will lead to great complications. And the complications started this year. It started with a simple, well, when I say simple, I shouldn't use the word simple, a straightforward crime. It was a very bad crime. It was a straightforward crime. What should have been done then, in my opinion, was that action should have been taken promptly, and justice must not only have been done, but seen to be done. That would have diffused the situation. But because we have no rule of law in the country, and we do not have security forces capable of carrying out their duties promptly and correctly, the perception that justice had not been done led to revenge actions. And so violence bred violence, and this all escalated. And there are people who want to encourage this violence. There are people like that all over the world. It's not just my country. But I'm sure you're aware that people get caught up in their own anger and in their own hatred, and they can no longer think of the long run. They just want to think of how to vent their anger on those who have caused them hurt. Human rights violations must never be overlooked. Human rights violations must be kept in check by the rule of law. I do not believe in rule of law that is divorced from human rights. Some people try to say that human rights and rule of law are not the same. Well, not the kind of rule of law I mean, because the Universal Declaration of Human Rights makes it quite clear in the preamble that human rights should be protected by the rule of law. So wherever there have been human rights violations, we must take action, whichever community performed those rights. But I'm not going to condemn one community or the other, because that only inflames passions. If one side speaks up for one community, then the other community takes umbrage and starts attacking, counter-attacking. And the whole thing gets worse and worse. The problem there is, first of all, of citizenship, of rule of law, but after that, of citizenship. As I said earlier, we must have strong, fair citizenship laws, and these must be upheld by rule of law. We've got to go step by step. The first thing now is for passions to simmer down. The government has created a commission to look into matters there. We are not part of the commission, and I'm very careful not to say anything about what the commission is doing until its report is in, because if we are going to criticize them simply because we are not in it, that's just making political capital out of the situation, and I would not like to do that.
Let's go up to the balcony, please.
Thank you. Thank you, Auntie Sue, and thank you, Senator McConnell. I just want to say quickly to my fellow Burmese, in case if they have any burning question for Auntie Sue. Mego Mezia, she must have a good host. I quit you at a Auntie or Melo Yalo, and I'm merely Biosici.
Bamalu Melo Yabal, no?
Yes, Bamalu Melo Yalo, no?
Oh, Java Malubio in Alem Lamdu. Jam Pamalu Piru Yala. Okay. Oh, Jivaro, the Gasan Patalubono, who Diane Damia, Queen in a Patalubo. Anyhow, Jivaro Tatamama, Lupulures, Java, those are the Winkamari. A cooti leg, in Docateri in a Pianare, Kajalushi, Miolin the Luma Pitari, Kanaka Shiria, Lechmaro Tibari. Ero Dilo. Kayin Doka there, Piana Lucilushin, go and name him, go Lung Chung Shin Nai Aung, Lopos Raj, marry down with the Kupit, Lujar Lekan Habizaba. Who you know up your upon, Kayin the Jabba Madaja, Satwin Dakayin about the care of your at the cha, or Kaching Neduma, dig up your get, Shiva, Kachin the chap, the Jabba Madaja Subro, or Pipi up your get is, Bijama, the Tankoane, Sene, Gogu Nika, Kachimpine, Dwadunga, Edia Kachin, and Diana, Nigo Mari. Pure, Bojo on Sabono, Kachin the Jap, Bamada Jap, Superior Pure, a cool to the Mia di Lula Pio Malabo. Piobra Griti Mala, so Jama Pure, Jama, the Japanese Alam, she could chain them a pin, and Malam pin and Mulo. Jamaru Alum to do. Josa Piroma, Nini Piamane, Chanda Naima, Jamaru. Josa me, Lujma Piobare, a cool ma solution, no Pumbio Guni never pipi, Ludajan Sanare Guni pipi, Jabao Labro, Dimene, a poesy, Nanganis, and Jabba Mia Piobare, Pama Miazu Shire, Pinerima, a Guni to Coupe Luchin, Diana Pinerima, Dandu to Coupiame, Diloni now, Luame, no, Daro, Pumbio Yidre, Dilo Pumbio Malone out there, Dilo Pumbio Malage Baroye. Away out needed Nangadu Nangandari, Pian Lahnamabo. ပြန်လာပြီးဆင်းရဲနေတယ်ဆိုရင်လည်းမကောင်းဘူးဒါပေမဲ့ဆင်းရဲမှုကတင်မလုံလောက်ပါဘူးနိုင်ငံရေးအရာလုံခြုံမှုရှိရမယ်အဲ့တော့အဲ့ဒီလုံခြုံမှုအခုကျမတို့ပေးနိုင်ပြီလားဆိုတော့ကျမပုံမှန်လည်းပဲပြောမယ်ကျမတို့အာမမခံနိုင်သေးဘူးအာမခံနိုင်အောင်လို့ကျမတို့စူးစမ်းပါမယ်အဲ့ဒီလိုအခြေအနေရောက်အောင်လို့အဲ့ဒီလိုနိုင်ငံရေးအခြေအနေရောက်အောင်လို့ကျမတို့ရဲ့ပြည်သူပြည်သားတွေအတွက်အပြည့်အဝအကာအကွယ်ပေးနိုင်တဲ့အခြေအနေရောက်အောင်လို့ကျမတို့စူးစမ်းပါမယ်မရောက်သေးပဲနဲ့တော့ကျမတို့ရောက်ပြီးဆိုပြီးတော့ဟိုလှည့်ပြားပြီးတော့မပြောပါဘူးဆိုတော့ကျမကတိပေးပါတယ်
We have time for just one more question. So.
ကျွန်တော်ပမာလိုပဲပြောပါမယ်
Okay.
အခုကျွန်တော်တို့လူငယ်တွေဒီအမေရိကန်နိုင်ငံမှာလာရောက်တာအများကြီးပဲရောက်လာတာအများကြီးပဲเนาะအထူးသဖြင့်ကျွန်တော်တို့ Louisville ပြည်နယ်မှာLouisville မြို့မှာကျွန်တော်တို့ကြည်ပဲဖြစ်ဖြစ်ရှားပဲဖြစ်ဖြစ်ချေပဲဖြစ်လူငယ်တွေအများကြီးပဲเนาะဒေါ်စောကြီးလို့တဲ့လူကသူတို့ကသဘောကျတယ်ကိုယူတယ်သူတို့တွေ့တော့ role model ဖြစ်နေတယ်ဒါပေမဲ့သူကတန်းနေတော့သူလုပ်ပါတယ်သူတို့လုပ်ပါတယ်သူကသူတငယ်ကြီးပဲဖြစ်ဖြစ်သူဆရာမပဲဖြစ်ဖြစ်သူတွေ့တဲ့လူတွေလည်းသူတို့ပြောပြပါတယ်သူနိုင်ငံကျော်ဒါပေမဲ့သူတို့ကသူ့နိုင်ငံအတွက်အခြားပါကူညီပေးနိုင်ပါမယ်
ကျမတို့ဒီလိုအခုပေါ့နော်ဒီမှာရောက်လာတဲ့လူငယ်တွေကဒုက္ခသည်တွေဘဝကနေရောက်လာပြီးတော့ဒီရောက်တဲ့အခါကျရင်ဒီနိုင်ငံကိုယ်နိုင်ငံအတွက်ဘာပြန်ပြီးတော့ကူညီပေးရမလဲဆိုစိတ်ထားရှိတာကိုကျမအယံဝင်းတာတယ်ဒါဂုံလဲယူတယ်လေးစားတယ်အဲ့ဒီတော့တကယ်ပဲကူညီပေးခြင်းနဲ့ဆိုလို့ရှိရင်နံပါတ်1ကကိုကဘယ်ဘက်ကိုအာသန်လဲဆိုတာသိရမယ်ဥပမာဆိုရင်တယောက်နဲ့တယောက်မတူကြဘူးတချို့ဆိုလို့ရှိရင်ပညာရေးဘက်မှာအာသန်မယ်တချို့ဆိုလို့ရှိရင်ကျန်းမာရေးဘက်မှာအာသန်မယ်ဘာဘက်မှာကိုအာသန်လဲဆိုတော့ပထမသိဖို့လိုပါတယ်ဆိုတော့ကိုအာသန်ရဲ့ဘက်ကနေမှကိုကူညီလို့ရမှာအခုကျမတို့ကနေပြီးတော့ပထမအရေးကြီးတာကျမတို့ရဲ့လူငယ်တွေမြန်မာနိုင်ငံကိုပြန်လာခြင်းလို့ရှိရင်ပေါ့နော်ဘယ်လိုပုံစံနဲ့ပဲပြန်လာခြင်းပြန်လာရောက်လာတာဖြစ်ပြန်လာခြင်းလို့ရှိရင်လုံခြုံနဲ့ပြန်လာနိုင်မဲ့အနေအထားတစ်ခုကိုဖန်တီးဖို့ကလိုပါတယ်နောက်တစ်ခုကလည်းတချို့တွေကဒီနိုင်ငံမှာပဲအခြေချခြင်းနေဆိုရင်လည်းဒါဟာအပြစ်မဟုတ်ပါဘူးเนาะအဲ့ဒါတော့ကျမသတိပေးပြရစီဒီနိုင်ငံမှာအခြေချတာဟာအပြစ်မဟုတ်ပါဘူးဘာဖြစ်လို့လဲဆိုတော့ကိုလိုအပ်တဲ့အချိန်တုန်းကကိုလက်ခံခဲ့တဲ့နိုင်ငံတစ်ခုပေါ်မှာတန်ရုံးစင်တွဲသွားတာကျေးဇူးတရားရှိသွားတာမေတ္တာထားတာဒါအမှားမဟုတ်ပါဘူးအဲ့တော့ဒီနိုင်ငံမှာပဲအခြေချပြီးတော့နေခြင်းနဲ့ဒါပေမဲ့လည်းတတ်နိုင်သမျှအရင်တုန်းကကိုယ့်ရဲ့အမိနိုင်ငံကိုပြန်ပြီးတော့ကူးခြင်းနဲ့ဆိုရင်လည်းအဲ့လိုအခွင့်အရေးတွေဖြစ်အောင်လို့ကျမတို့ဖန်တီးဖို့ကြိုးစားနေပါတယ်အရေးကြီးတာတော့ကျမတို့အဆက်အသွယ်ရှိဖို့ပါပဲအဆက်အသွယ်ရှိတော့ကျမတို့ဒီလိုမြန်မာနိုင်ငံကရောက်လာတဲ့နိုင်ငံသူနိုင်ငံသားတွေအခုဘယ်နိုင်ငံမှာပဲဘယ်နိုင်ငံသားပဲခံယူပေါ့နော်ကျမတို့ရဲ့ဆက်သွယ်နိုင်ဖို့ဆိုလို့ရှိရင်ကျမတို့အဖွဲ့ချုပ်ရုံးရဲ့ email လိပ်စာကိုပေးလို့ရှိပါတယ်အဲ့တော့အဲ့ဒီဟာတော့တရားကိုတော့ထပြီးတော့ပေးခိုင်းရမယ်ထင်တယ်ကျမတို့တဲ့လူငယ်အတန်းကျဲနဲ့လူငယ်ကိုអော်ပြီးတော့အဲ့ဒီ email လိပ်စာကိုပေးခိုင်းလိုက်ပါမယ်အဲ့ဒါကိုကျမတို့ ਨੇ ဆက်သွယ်ပါဆက်သွယ်ပြီးတော့ဘယ်လိုအလုပ်မျိုးမှာစိတ်ဝင်စားရဆိုတာပြောပါI'm just going to ask one of my team to announce the email address of the National League for Democracy because this young man has been saying something that makes me very happy that although he came here as a refugee, he and his fellow young people settled here in Louisville want to know what they can do to help us back in Burma. I find this very, very encouraging that they are thinking of us in spite of the fact that for years they spent a very difficult time in refugee camps. So one of the members of my team will shout out the NLD email address, and those who would like to know what they can do to help us, please take down that address and get in touch with us. They are shout. Slowly. All right?
Secretary Chow, thank you for joining us today. It's always wonderful to see you. Senator McConnell, you've brought some amazing people to the university. Today certainly will stand out as one of the very best. Aung Suu Kyi, please come forward. We would like to give you just a small thank you from the university and really appreciate you making time in such a busy schedule to come visit with us today. And thank you all very much for joining us today, too. Thank you.